usted agente de la seguridad cubana? No.
You have to lie in order to do that job, and you have to be somebody you are not.
¿Es usted comunista? No.
Fernando, pasas a ser oficial de casa.
I believe that for every Cuban that is present with such a mission, it would be an honor to accomplish it.
To do whatever is necessary for the revolution. That was my answer, not my response.
I knew for sure any action that they asked me to do, I would do it.
You have to use fake identities to work inside the United States.
Well, that's part of the training. In order to be successful, it has to be done quietly and in silence. It's not an easy task, I can say.
It's a disturbing case to know that we and our institutions are being spied upon, are being reported upon, and the information being transmitted back to the Director of Intelligence over in Cuba. And we're not going to stand for it.
This spy ring was tasked by the Cuban government to strike at the very heart of our national security system and our very democratic process.
These charges against these individuals allege actions for the Republic of Cuba against the government of the United States.
We knew that we were technically breaking that law, but it is the history.
It's not a game to protect Cuba. That's our main mission.
Cuban history began when Columbus discovered the island on his first voyage to the New World. The Spaniards built the Morro Castle to defend the city of Havana from the pirates who pillaged the islands of the West Indies.
The tropical island of Cuba is only 90 miles from the United States, so near that the affairs of the two countries have always been closely related.
Even though we have a Cuban government here since 1902, all the way to 1959, the people who really took the shot here were the American government.
Nothing happened in the political life in Cuba and in the economic life in Cuba that was not heavily influenced by the government and the interest of the United States.
Everything belonged to the American businesses. The rice company, the electric company, everything. The sugar company.
Cuba's beautiful beaches and pleasant climate are among the attractions that bring tourists from other lands, many of them from the United States.
At night, the city takes on a new complexion. Amid a blaze of lights, the cabarets come to life. Any excuse is reason enough for a celebration.
You ask yourself, oh, so why was a revolution needed then?
Havana was like Las Vegas. It had a lot of casinos, nightclubs, prostitution, and it was all controlled by the American mafia.
Vacationers that came down from the U.S. weren't looking for a suntan. They were looking for a high time. It was attracting a different type of people that wanted prostitution, people that wanted gambling. Corruption was great. U.S. ownership was vast.
A small group of Cubans were profiting for this special relationship with the United States. People that had huge amounts of money. I cannot tell you firsthand because I was born in 1963, but my parents were working class individuals. According to what my parents explained to me, it was a very unequal distribution of income and wealth of the country.
This was really, really poor, you know, really, really poor.
My father was a farmer, and my mother was a farmer too. They don't have money, they don't have nothing to even to eat.
Well, my father was born in 1930s. From what he tells me, working back then was a privilege.
This gulf between the rich and the poor is the stuff revolutions are made of.
After 1953, when Fidel attacked the Moncada garrison, there was that feeling, according to what my parents explained to me, there was that feeling in the population that something of importance had happened. It was something that sparked the interest of the population, because we have to understand also that there was a feeling of deception in politics and in politicians.
I would say that most Cubans thought that there was no straightening out Cuba.
It was Fidel Castro's revolution that said, wait a minute, stop there.
This revolution of Castro's was the first in Cuban history to base its policies and its power on the peasant. They flocked to his support.
Fidel, he called the people to fight, and everything changed. And all of a sudden, that skeptical people who didn't care about politics became politicized through the revolution.
Joyous followers of Fidel Castro sweep triumphantly through the Cuban capital hours after their rebellion had toppled the regime of Fulgencio Batista.
Those who stayed were the ones who supported Cuban national sovereignty and who were the lower classes who were not the beneficiaries of the society that was controlled by the United States of America previously.
When the revolution came to power, it affected the interests of those with close ties to the United States system.
Shortly after the Cuban Revolution, many people, especially the upper and middle class of Cuba, left the country. They lost everything they had, their homes, their property, their possessions, and a large percentage of them came to Miami.
They moved with the mentality that the revolution would not last very long. Many people said the Americans are not going to allow this revolution to happen.
The U.S. decided to apply to Cuba the same formula that they had applied to Guatemala or different countries in Latin America. They would support counter-revolution through all means, terrorism, armed invasion, and weaken the revolution to topple it down.
I got involved with the CIA as a member of a group of students in Cuba. My father was in the sugar industry, was an executive for an American company. The middle classes didn't believe that communism was the best for Cuba. The government of Cuba stole from the people of Cuba their own success.
Jose Basulto, he thought that his mission in life was to oust Castro and change the regime.
I would have fought a war against them 1, 2, 3 times if necessary, had that produced the results we were looking for.
He was a fighter, let's put it that way, against Castro and against the revolution.
We were invited to come to the U.S. with the CIA to receive training. We were trained on multiple things, like intelligence, propaganda, psychological warfare, guns,
Brigade 2506 was trained to come to Cuba in what later was known as the Bay of Pigs invasion.
They were trying to, destroy the revolution.
The small force of invaders landed at a semi-isolated resort area on the south coast of Cuba on a strip of beach called Playa Hidron at the Bay of Pigs.
At that moment, they were thinking that the revolution don't have support from the population. That was a mistake.
They were defeated so fast.
They didn't last more than 72 hours.
Our plan failed. We simply lost.
Fidel was able to say, the Americans are trying to overthrow us, we've stopped them, and so it actually helped solidify the support for the revolution.
The Bay of Pigs invasion was a tragic experience, both for the anti-Castro Cubans and the United States.
The majority of those who left Cuba after the revolution were peaceful. There was a small percentage who had lost their businesses, their homes, and their influence in Cuba that turned violently against the revolution.
This is Al Dempsey in Miami, just 5 minutes away from Miami Beach's lush multi-million-dollar hotels. Men are training to fight Fidel Castro's armies in Cuba. These men are bankers, lawyers, former professional men. There are even a couple of bakers in the group.
You have militant exiles who formed groups, militias, and became an offensive weapon, trying to overthrow the government in Havana by violent means.
They were involved in a crusade against the Cuban government.
I was born on June the 9th, 1963. The life in Cuba at that time was at the very beginning of the revolution.
I grew up in the 60s. There are hundreds of attacks. There were bombs that were placed in different areas throughout the whole island.
I remember clearly when I was a kid that one day the city of Havana was shaken by somebody who had come to shoot at a hotel. A hotel who was next to the shore right here in Miramar, with a boat and a cannon.
Yes, I shot the cannon. I only fired 15 rounds, and my co-gunner, if you may, the one that brought me the bullets, he said, I have to fire one, so he shot one. I had the FBI behind me for at least a solid year. They didn't do anything to me. I wasn't even brought for interrogation.
The government of the United States, they don't do nothing if you are committing terrorism against another countries.
We were a country under siege.
What we call today IEDs, the improvised explosive devices, that's exactly what they were doing. They were planting explosive devices or bombs in order to create chaos.
There are thousands of victims in Cuba of those attacks.
We understand, even being a child, that the revolution is under aggression,
We always knew that there were groups like that, and there were people in Miami thinking of ways to harm us. That is one of the reasons why individuals like us were needed in Miami.
In this war against communists, a lot of innocents have been sacrificed, and we know some more has to be if we want to make the victory, the final victory.
A Cuban passenger jet en route from Barbados to Havana crashed into the sea following an onboard explosion. 73 persons, 57 of them Cuban, were killed. Cuban exile leader Orlando Bosch and several other persons have been arrested in Venezuela in connection with that crash.
At that time, 1976, that was the first time an airplane was hit by a terrorist group.
When you see the people that were in that plane, young people, it was a horrendous crime. I was 11 years old. In the Revolution Square, we were paying homage to little pieces that could be recovered from the people in the plane.
The whole Cuban people was there, more than 1 million Cubans.
It had an impact on me as a adolescent. I mean, I was 13 years old, and I was in the Revolution Square with my father, my mother, and my sisters.
Everybody in Cuba was crying. Everybody was crying because that was a terrible crime.
No podemos decir que el dolor se comparte. El dolor se multiplica. Millones de cubanos lloramos hoy junto a los seres queridos de las víctimas del abominable crimen. Y cuando un pueblo enérgico y viril llora, la injusticia tiembla. Intimidar al pueblo es imposible. Frente a la cobardía y la monstruosidad de crímenes semejantes, el pueblo se enardece y cada hombre y mujer se convierte en un soldado fervoroso y heroico dispuesto a morir.
I don't think the Cuban people has never been after revenge. We only want justice. A couple of years later, there is this TV show reflecting on the life of somebody who was infiltrated in the United States. A Cuban infiltrating the CIA. The title of the TV show, In Silence, had to be done. Because in order to be successful, it has to be done quietly and in silence. Remember, back in those days, that was the most watched TV show in Cuba. Every Cuban identified with the character. And it's a character that is based on true facts. It gave us a sense of, well, there is a way to face these actions against Cuba, those who attacked us. And that made me think about that possibility. It was something that influenced me. That is something that I would like to do. That is something that I wish I had the opportunity to do. Of course, I didn't ask for the opportunity because that's not the way it works. It's just the opportunity came to me. I graduated from college in 1987. I studied international relations, and then I went to Africa. I was 24 when I went to Angola.
I was 20 years old when I went to Angola. I went there to defend the right cause, which was the independence of Angola.
I graduated. I volunteered to go to Angola. I was there as a lieutenant of a scout platoon.
I was stricken by the poverty, the misery that colonialism imposes on people. Not too different from what was happening in Cuba before the revolution. But at the same time, I could see the appreciation and the love that those people developed for the Cubans, because we went there and treated them as human beings. And it was beautiful. I learned a lot there.
It was really a powerful experience. The experience in Angola really made me stronger as a human being, as a man.
Cuban intelligence started observing me there.
I returned back to Cuba. Somebody approached me, and I didn't even know what it was for.
One day somebody come to you and tell you, we need to have a meeting with you.
Somebody went to my house and left a message. We need you to present in some place, some government place, the next day. So I went there. I didn't know what it was about.
When I came back to Cuba and I was about to start working as a diplomat, they approached me and presented a mission. My mission was to direct in the field a group of special agents that had been located in Florida. And they said, you know, we have people coming from Florida to do sabotage here and some acts of terrorism. And we need somebody to go there and infiltrate those people and send the information here.
I saw enough of the crimes committed against Cuba during the years so as to be aware of the need to defend it.
He asked me if I was willing to be part of that.
He was very insistent, telling me that I thought it over.
I believe that for every Cuban that is present with such a mission, it would be an honor to accomplish it. And I said yes.
I told him right away, if you believe that you need my services, I'm ready.
I said, it's my duty.
I knew for sure any action that they asked me to do, I would do it.
To do whatever is necessary for the revolution. That was my answer, my response. And then I started working with the Secret Services.
After that, then you go to a period of training. Basically, we have to take classes of work-related issues like cryptography, psychology. You have to deal with many people. You have to deal with yourself too.
Using different identities, another kind of personalities.
We took all kind of martial arts.
Things that prepare to be a secret agent.
This was a military operation from day one.
We were running this operation without a single weapon.
The training, in my case, it took a couple of years.
Of course, we got to do it without people knowing.
It takes separation from your family.
Separation was very hard. I met Adriana in 1986. She was starting to be a chemical technician.
Sabía que me gustaba mucho el mar, estábamos frente al mar. Me señaló, mira qué barco más bonito, hacia un lado, y cuando yo miré hacia el otro, él me dio un beso y hasta el día de hoy. Ahí fue donde empezamos nuestra relación de noviazgo.
We married in 1988.
Me and Olguita, we were very happy. A very happy couple.
Y bueno, René estaba muy lindo, la verdad, te lo puedo decir.
We had a daughter which we adored.
Porque bueno, fue una felicidad para nosotros tener nuestra hija.
It was a very beautiful period.
We discussed having children, but first I was finishing my studies. And then she was finishing her studies. Then Angola came, and then we decided to keep waiting.
I met Elizabeth in 1988. I met her in one bus stop. She was very beautiful that day. And asked her for if she wants to have an ice cream with me. We got married in a very, big ceremonial in Malecon. That was in 1990. But what happened at the same time, I was working for the Secret Services. She didn't know nothing about me. She didn't know that I was working for the Secret Service.
I never told anybody in my family what I was doing.
For me, it was very tough. I was working supposedly for the Foreign Affairs office. Every day when you wake up in the morning, your wife asks you, where are you going? What are you gonna do today? At what time you coming back? And you have to say, well, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know when I come back. I don't know at what time I can come back because that's the way it is. If you say anything, you jeopardize your mission.
I would consider them brave men. I mean, it takes some balls to do what they did.
You are able to do something that you understand and believe is good. You have to sacrifice something for that, you know?
You have to lie in order to do that job. and you have to be somebody you are not. And it takes a toll on you. It's not easy. You have to detach from your previous lives, from your previous ideas, so that people will see an evolution of your thought. Little by little, you start speaking differently. You are not as politicized as you would be before. You are more critical of things. I'm a very outspoken guy. So becoming something different and living through life, for me, is not easy. It's tough. So little by little, you have to be changing in front of the people. I have been already graduated from the aviation school. I was a flight instructor and I was flying a lot. I was told to steal a plane. They thought, with reason, that it would give me, on my arrival, some credibility and some propaganda which would be good for the mission. It was a little bit traumatic that day. That day was another day, just another day like days before. I've been trying to take a plane to the US for some months. So I had to do several attempts. I had to go back to my house, and it was really stressing because then you would go back and you would feel, on one hand, you would feel relieved that you're going to see your daughter and your wife again. But on the other hand, you feel that you have to fulfill the mission and you can't. It's complicated. I left on December 8, 1990. I said goodbye to my wife, and I remember exactly how I left her standing in the middle of a walkway, her dress with flowers. I looked at her and I thought, well, I don't know whether I'm gonna see her again or not. And I met my daughter. She fell asleep. I took her and put her into the bed, and then I look at her. I remember her dress, a yellow dress, and I left her there and stood for a moment watching her until I just checked my head and left. But it's some things that you cannot forget. And then when I went to the airport, I found the right moment to steal the plane, and I left. It was really hard. The warning signs of fuel started to tell me, you're running out of fuel. It was very, very tense at that moment. And it was incredible. After 5 minutes, when I was about to return, I saw the Key West, the naval station in front of my plane. So I landed there with the little fuel I had left, and that was it. There came one little truck which said with a sign, "Follow me." I was processed on the base. They agreed that they would put me in a motel in Key West, and I spent my night in the motel there, thinking of my family, of Cuba, on everybody. It was really hard, to tell you the truth. Remember that at one point I took off my identity card from Cuba, where I had the pictures of my wife and my daughter, and I looked at them. And I started to cry. I was thinking of what would be happening in Cuba. At the end, I fell asleep because I was so tired that I couldn't remain waking, but it was very rough for me.
El 8 de diciembre de 1990 me sorprendió la noticia de que René se había ido del país.
The next day, I sent a letter to Olguita, full of BS, telling her what I had left Cuba because it was better in the United States, that at last I was free in a democratic society, where I could become a pilot, a well-paid pilot, and do whatever I wanted, that someday we would be together, Irmita herself and myself, to be happy again, all kinds of, stupid stuff.
Y yo, sin entender nada, yo decía que no era posible, que ese no era René, que ese no era el René que yo había conocido, que ese no era René.
Supposedly I was a very happy deserter. I waited for a reply.
Tanto, con el dolor de mi alma, me senté, escribí una carta diciéndole todo lo que yo sentía.
And went to my room to read the letter. So I opened up and started reading the letter. And it killed me. She said me all kinds of things, that I wasn't a good father, that I could keep the United States for me.
Y ya yo no tenía nada que ver con René, que bueno que René se fue y que de verdad era un traidor, ¿no?
She basically broke with me. And I was in shock when I read that. When you read it, it hurts. You look at it now, and it's a very logical response. But even though I knew it was logical, I cried a lot when I read that letter.
A eso lo siguieron días muy difíciles para mí.
It was a lonely time. But on the other side, you know it's your duty to do it. To do my job as a Cuban agent.
Miami, one of the world's hottest cities, welcomes you. In Miami, the world is your oyster. So welcome to South Florida and have a safe and pleasant stay.
I would be listening to Miami radio stations. They would do a radio program from Little Havana in a restaurant. And they had invited Capitan Eduardo Ferrer, who was the head of the CUPA, Cuban American Pilots Association. All of them fascist, right-wingers, counter-revolutionaries, most full of hatred against Cuba. I located the restaurant. And I went to the restaurant and I presented myself. Listen, I'm the pilot who stole a plane. So they put me in touch with Capitan Ferrer. I went to see him to his house. He gave me the welcome, red carpet. The guy who stole a plane from Cuba. So what do you want to do? How can I help you? So I tell him, I want to be a pilot here. And that's how I came in contact with those people.
Pasé muchísimo trabajo, como lo pasó todo el pueblo, pero en este caso yo solita. Como no tenía la ayuda de mi esposo, yo era una gente joven, y realmente yo trataba todo el tiempo de proteger a Irmita. Primero le dije que su papá se fue a estudiar. Y bueno, ¿y por qué no me lo dijo? ¿Por qué no se despidió de mí? Niños, al fin, ella jugaba mucho con el primo más contemporáneo, que es mi sobrino. Y Irmita vino llorando. ¿Y qué te pasa? ¿Qué te pasó con Michelle? Dice, ya yo no quiero más a mi primo. Bueno, ¿por qué? Dice, porque mi primo dice que mi papá es un gusano. Y entonces en mi familia, mentar a René era mentar al hombre que me había abandonado con una niña y se había llevado un avión y se había convertido en un contrarrevolucionario.
Little by little, they will be infiltrating those groups in order to get information about the plans of these organizations and sending information to Cuba.
You have to use fake identities to work inside the United States.
You are going to live the life of somebody else.
You have to become a person that you are not.
To know by heart a biography of somebody else.
They used dead for the most part, dead individuals using their passports had scoured sort of the obituaries. It's about my age. Let's falsify his identification papers, just like what you see in the TV.
And you have to know everything about the person. The day he was born,
Who his parents were,
the schools he was attending,
Name of the teachers, the name of your classmates.
and then you have to start living that life. It's not an easy task, I can say.
In my case, I was Manuel Viramontes, which was a Puerto Rican. I was Puerto Rican, so I have to learn Puerto Rico, everything.
I was using the name Luis Medina. I was a Puerto Rican, and I know all the biography of Luis Medina.
Well, my legend was, I was Ruben Campa, an individual that had been born in the United States of Mexican origins. I was carrying identification papers that were not mine, false identity.
You have Social Security card, you had a driver license.
The first time that you go in the U.S. with a fake ID is hard.
The first time is terrible.
They asked me for my passport, but Puerto Ricans, you could travel just with your driver license and your birth certificate. So I didn't have a passport. And they started interrogating me, why you don't have a passport. They gave me a hard time. It was a kind of a scary moment.
You need to believe it just to act that way. It's very complicated, and it's something that you have to be every day on top of it.
Remember that I passed through immigration with no problem at all.
Once you cross that line, you said, I'm here. Once you are in the U.S., you have to start building his history.
You need to build your life.
But I realized that it's good to have pictures because you need to have some history of life. Because pictures give you history. How can I show people that I'm Luis Medina, a citizen of the United States, for real, with pictures? I am Luis Medina the whole time I'm inside the United States. He's exactly like me, but different than me. You can see the pictures. You have to portray Puerto Rican, and the way they dress up, you know, the Puerto Rican use big chains. And I received this one from another officer. This helped me a lot in my job. It helped me a lot because it helped me to be Luis Medina and to fulfill many missions in my job. And I feel like it's a lucky charm.
The Cubans were very good at their trade craft. I mean, they were very good at spying.
There is a group of people that are infiltrated in the groups. And my task, my goal, my mission was to handle those individuals.
Cuban spies were trying to get into anti-Castro organizations here in South Florida. Who was doing what? Reporting back to their government.
But in my case, once I started dealing with those groups, I was given a lot of liberty to make assessments and to decide who to approach, who not to approach.
I didn't know them as spies. I knew them as participants in Brothers to the Rescue.
I was together with the president of Cuba, Capitan Eduardo Ferrer. He was consulting me on how to launch a unmanned airplane to Cuba with explosives. We were talking about the feasibility of doing it. And all of a sudden, Basulto called on the phone. And Basulto told this guy that they were creating Brothers to the Rescue the next day on Miami Airport. And the guy told him, oh, you know who's with me here? He's Rene Gonzalez, the guy who stole a plane from Cuba. And Basulto, of course, he was excited at the prospect of meeting me. So he told him, oh, invite him there. I want to meet him, whatever. The next day I went to Miami Airport. I had already met a couple of guys in Miami, and they greeted me. And one of them introduced me to Basulto.
Rene Gonzalez. He told me how he got there before everybody else. I don't know. Well, these people from Cuba, I'm telling you, they're good.
Brothers to the Rescue in the early 1990s was formed as a result of the influx of Cuban rafters into the United States. The Coast Guard couldn't find them all. People were dying, people were drowning.
We were going to start flying airplanes to locate the refugees at sea.
Since the beginning, I was involved in most operations of brother to the rescue.
They had a bunch of Cessna airplanes. They had volunteer pilots, volunteer spotters. They would radio the location of the rafters to the Coast Guard, who at the time would pick them up and bring them into the United States safely.
At that point in time, they weren't being repatriated to Cuba, they were being brought to the United States.
If they were picked up on the sea or they made it onto land in the United States, they were given permanent resident status immediately.
Miami! The number of Cuban rafters is on the rise. Nearly 2 dozen picked up yesterday. That's why Brothers to the Rescue is stepping up search flights for rafters.
I realized that doing sometimes good things have more impact than doing bad things.
Right away, he started to receive funds. People in Miami gave their money, and all of a sudden, he became a personality in Miami.
To refugees, they are heroes in the sky, the Cuban exile group Brothers to the Rescue.
When he was doing just that in the Florida Strait, international waters, rescuing the rafters, Cuba just kept watching.
It was intelligence gathering. That's all Rene really did. He was good at it, too.
You have to set a way to communicate with them.
It was the beeper time. One of them would send me a beeper with a code saying, I need to talk to you. You have to go get out of your house, look for a safe public phone. First, you don't go straight to the payphone. You have to do a score counter surveillance plan for me to be sure that when I get that phone, nobody will follow me. So I call a beeper from the public phone and put a number.
They would beep you and you would go to a place.
I go to that place and he goes to that place. It's something that is prearranged.
I gave him a whole report of the 6 months since I have been in the United States. About Brother to the Rescue, what they were doing, my involvement with Basuto, with Cuba, of course the plot of the airplane full of explosives. And from there on, we started to communicate regularly.
And then I have to go right back and send an urgent communication to Cuba. We had a system to transmit information, short messages to Cuba through phone lines.
You pass on the information and you're not responsible with what is done with the information. You just pass it on to Cuba.
Truly, it was a very sophisticated operation that was being run not just to provide protection, as they would assert. They were trying to get into U.S. Army facilities.
Ramon, for a time, lived in Tampa, Florida, near MacDill Air Force Base. And he had, we called it the Box of War. Time Life magazine company sold these little, they're like recipe cards, but they had pictures of the planes on them. This is what an F-16 looks like. This is what an A-10 looks like. Basically little flashcards for children that are publicly available. He watched planes take off and identified the planes with the Box of War.
Sitting around counting planes at MacDill Air Force Base up in Tampa, that's all they ever did. And down in Boca Chica, same thing.
Tony was working at the Naval Air Station in Key West, Florida. He was mainly employed at the Public Works Department on the base.
The labor shop, that's where I work.
He was a metal worker, no access to any secret information at all.
He didn't have any clearance. He just counted planes, something you could do from the road.
Planes can be seen from the public highway, which runs perpendicular to the military base.
If you get a car and drive by a US-1 close to the base, you can see how many planes there are. You don't even need to work there.
You can go, it's a sign there, you can take a picture there and record it.
I'm convinced that one of the goals of this conspiracy was to exploit, to better understand how our military would work, our assets, our capabilities, trying to count planes, see what planes were at what Air Force bases.
The question is why Cuba needed them.
For us, it was very important to see what was happening in Boca Chica because Boca Chica is very close to Cuba. The naval base closer to Cuba.
When the U.S. invaded Panama, in that Key West station that used to be 12 planes, days before there were 60, 70. When the U.S. went to Haiti, the forces in that Key West station multiplied as well. So Cuba wanted to have an early eye checking. If one day, instead of 12 planes, there are 60, something's going on in the area.
We were afraid for an invasion coming from Boca Chica.
They would snoop around, what are you doing? Where are your buildings? What are you doing here? And they snooped around this one building that was going to be used to hold classified information.
They making a renovation of that building. The building 1125, that was the number, A1125.
Tony was working on that building as a laborer.
And I hear somebody say, oh, this building is something for top secret, So I put that in one of my reports. Oh, I work in the building that somebody said that.
The Cuban Directorate of Intelligence said, tell us more about that stuff.
And I never answered. I don't know what they said that.
And the law in the U.S. says very clearly that in order for you to be guilty of espionage, you have to have gathered or transmitted information that is closely held, that is secret.
And that thing was open. Even a guy come with a machine of Coca-Cola. It was not like, oh, this is closed, this is something,
And that's not espionage, because it's not secret.
Who might have access, in fact, more access than the janitor, who comes in sort of unpretentious, without notice, and is able to move around freely inside a base where classified information is? All spies aren't James Bond. You need those others that are available and can get the job done.
We never tried to get any classified document, any top secret. I didn't know what is a top secret mean. Really, I didn't know.
It was illegal, it was in violation of our laws, but was it meant to harm our national security? No, I don't think so. Is Cuba even a threat to the United States? What are they going to do to us?
Cuba don't want any conflict. If somebody said that Cuba want a conflict with the United States, it's a crazy person. It's not,
I think all the Cubans really were ever worried about was, would they ever be invaded by the United States? It's all defensive, it's not offensive.
The news from ITN.
The red flag came down over the Kremlin tonight as President Gorbachev resigned and brought to an end 7 decades of communist rule in the Soviet Union.
The Soviet Union had disappeared. Cuba went into very severe economic crisis. What we call the special period began.
100% of the oil that was coming from the Soviet Union stopped, so we have zero energy. The situation was terrible.
The embargo places incredible economic limitations on the Cuban population. It's as harmful as any war. It kills innocent civilians.
Buena parte del periodo especial la pasé sola con mi hija. Y entonces, bueno, parece que es que yo estaba tan flaca y yo había pasado tanto trabajo. A mí se me había caído hasta la casa, hasta la escalera de la casa. Había ido a parar a un albergue.
People were desperate to get out of there, so there was an uptick in the number of people taking rafts and small boats to get out of Cuba.
Rafters have, since 1991, depended on being spotted by Brothers to the Rescue.
We had to admit that thousands of people were found. They would fill the plane with journalists from abroad, and they would go and look for rafters.
So that people throughout the world could see what was happening with Cuba, what is pain and suffering in the island, the lack of liberty, the lack of opportunity.
They would take advantage of the flux of rafters to launch a propaganda campaign against Cuba.
Private donations keep the brothers flying. Even airplanes have been donated. It's a passion for founder Jose Basulto.
They're coming out not because the United States is here, but because Fidel Castro is there. And until that is so, they're going to continue coming out of the island.
His goals are not public. I knew because I was there, but the public doesn't know about that. It was a very intelligently devised operation. It was a psyop operation based on the knowledge he had acquired from the CIA. Basulto never stopped first thinking of terrorism. He was a terrorist by training.
To call me terrorist it's hilarious. They try to portray me as something that I am not. Not that I wouldn't, under the circumstances, had taken arms in certain circumstances against them, because I saw it as the only way.
We had an agent infiltrating Brothers to the Rescue because we knew that they were doing way more of that.
Basulto consulted with me to land here in Cuba with explosive. I'm talking about 1992. And I went to see him. He had a map of the Cuban electric grid. He wanted to see with me whether he would be able to land the plane next to one of those grid towers to put an explosive and blow him up.
Ideas are ideas, but plans is a different story. Every time some of these guys do something to me, I wish I would be hitting him in the head with a bat. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to do it.
Renee's role was to infiltrate Brothers to the Rescue, then report back to Gerardo so that that information could be relayed to Cuba so that they could, be ready to deal with incursions by Brothers to the Rescue.
Fortunately, I didn't kill anybody. Not once. No, there is one person that can be claimed that he lost his life on account of what I did. Other people cannot say the same thing. By the way, who trained us to kill, who trained us to do all those things that nonviolence regrets when they happen, were the United States. We are the results of U.S. foreign policy.
Cuba would send an urgent communication. You could listen to the shortwave transmissions and receive the information from Cuba. Then after you have the information, you get it in a computer. You had a disk that has a special secret program, and that turned into a message. We received the instruction from Cuba. One of the missions that we were working in was called Marina Operation.
The mission was to surveil Orlando Bosch.
He had a long history of terrorism against Cuba.
Are you planning to try again to assassinate Fidel Castro?
Until the end, we will keep trying. We prefer to destroy Cuba than a communist Cuba.
As some authorities in the U.S. called him once, the worst terrorist in the Western Hemisphere. He kept planning terrorist attacks against Cuba all the time.
Nobody stopped him.
Cuba had information that he was planning to introduce some weapons in Cuba. We wanted to keep a close eye on him.
To be aware of what his movements were, who visited him, what he was involved in.
Basically, that included filming him.
We never used anything that was sophisticated, that was something like spyware. We used commercial stuff. Camera, regular camera, video camera that anybody has. He was meeting with individuals to organize actions against Cuba.
I had him very close. I remember being in a supermarket parking lot, and I remember thinking to myself, you could not imagine somebody that doesn't know who this guy is, could not imagine how criminal his mind is and how dangerous he is. It's out of conscience, out of heart, that you can do a job like this.
They were doing it not for the money. I mean, these were ideologues. They were doing it for what they thought were political and sort of reasons associated with their government.
As a matter of fact, out of ethics, Cuba had never paid an agent just to be an agent. The reason is simple, right? If you do something for money, you would do it for the people that give you the more money. If you are, I don't know, a baseball player or a soccer player and play for money, you will play for the team that pays you the most. And on that logic, if you are a spy for money, then you will fight for the country that pays you the most. And Cuba cannot compete with anybody on money issues, right?
Gerardo and the others lived in simple apartments.
I was living in a very small apartment, very small apartment.
Very modest individuals, modest means.
I was eating the basic thing, you know, like one hamburger was one Coca-Cola and 90 cents with 35 cents. That was my dinner.
Probably made more money from the American government working at Boca Chica than he did from the Cuban government as an agent.
You watch movies and agents have encounters in fancy restaurants or hotels or drive nice cars. We're having problems all the time with the old cars. Those were very difficult years.
René se va en el año 90 y empieza a pasar los años.
I knew that back then, at that time in Cuba, there was turmoil in the family, my loved ones, my friends were all would be, you know, thinking that I was a traitor, and it was really hard.
Y empecé a pensar y a pensar.
She didn't believe deep down that I was a traitor. She started to follow the traces that I left behind.
Yo dije, este hombre fue al trabajo a buscar alguna información sobre mí. Que me dijo que él que conocía a René desde Angola y que se había enterado de la noticia y bueno, que venía a ver cómo yo estaba, cómo estaba la niña.
Somehow she felt that he hadn't been with me in Angola. She started to look at this guy and follow that guy and call him to his job.
Tú no estuviste con René en Angola, tú estuviste en mi trabajo buscando información sobre mí y yo llegué a una conclusión de que René no es traidor y tú eres el compañero que lo atiende.
Well, the guy was in shock.
Ese hombre se insultó, me dijo una pila de cosas, no digas esas cosas, ya tú te estás volviendo loca, te vas a meter en un problema. Me llamó por teléfono y dice, necesito hablar contigo.
At the end, they had to call her and tell her, you know, please, leave us alone. He's with us.
Volví a respirar y dije, bueno, es el René que siempre conocí.
I knew that at some point she would join me in the U.S. if I had to stay.
We determined early on that there were a group of Cuban spies operating here in South Florida. But you have to understand, initially, the FBI treated this as sort of a separate intelligence operation. They were conducting sneak and peek warrants, basically going in, looking, copying, obtaining information, putting it all back, just like in the movies, and then analyzing, exploiting, and continuing their investigation. Intelligence had been gathered, people had been identified, but really initially, there was no contemplation of a prosecution.
4 News Now continues.
It is the start of Cuban rafter season, and today more were spotted.
In 1994, it was a period of very economic crisis. Fidel said, well, whoever wants to go in a raft, he can go. And thousands of people left.
During the 1994 rafter crisis, Brothers to the Rescue played a critical role, directing the Coast Guard to thousands of Cubans fleeing the island nation.
The rafters crisis forced the U.S. government to sign an agreement with Cuba.
What became known as wet foot, dry foot policy meant if you made it onto land in the United States, you were given permanent resident status immediately. If you were picked up at the sea, you were sent back to Cuba.
Now, this change in policy creates big problems for the Brothers to the Rescue. They spot the rafters, they call the Coast Guard.
Who is he gonna save if the rafters are gonna be sent back?
There was no reason for Brothers to Rescue to fly.
The public mission of Brothers to the Rescue comes to an end.
Then that policy changed. Their mission changed.
We put together the idea of a plan on how to structure a movement inside of Cuba using nonviolent means.
They began to poke the bear, as they say.
Well, Brothers to the Rescue plane flew right into Cuban airspace and over Havana.
This is an act of civil disobedience. We realize what we're doing, and all we're doing is signaling out to the people of Cuba that civil disobedience is possible.
Plane roared at rooftop level through downtown, banking towards Havana Harbor.
They threw leaflets trying to encourage the people to overthrow the government.
We had a slogan, compañeros no hermanos, which means comrades no, we're brothers. We flew by the Faro del Morro, this structure that has the lighthouse in Morro, and it went next to it. That really upset the government too.
It was a provocation to the Cuban government.
The Cuban government responded, saying any ship from abroad that forcibly invades our sovereign water will be sunk and any aircraft down.
You do enter the airspace or territorial waters or territory of another country, you are subject to the law enforcement agencies of that country.
We were willing to take the risks to bring about a change in the island by using nonviolence.
Remember, this is the same terrorist that fired cannon against a hotel in Cuba.
It never would have been tolerated by our government if Cuba sent a light plane over Washington, D.C., it would have been pulverized.
Unfortunately, Basulto decided to keep up that operations.
He overflew Havana many times, many times.
Those leaflets we had dropped that went to Havana, we did that like at least 3 times. We dropped at one point like 500,000 of them.
Every time that Basulto violated Cuban airspace, the Cuban government would send a diplomatic note to the United States with the data about the overflight.
The Cuban government repeatedly asked the U.S. government to stop the flights from the Brothers to the Rescue. The American government did nothing.
And he did it again and again, until in 1996, the Cuban government decided to put an end to that.
We decided, well, let's send 3 airplanes to fly the mission of seeing if we find any rafters.
2 p.m. Saturday, 3 small Cessna Skymaster aircraft took off from Opa-locka Airport near Miami.
The flight plans were provided to Cuba by the U.S. authorities, the FAA. So everybody knew that Basulto was flying to Cuba.
I called Havana Center, told them that we were coming in our mission and so on.
Instead of moving in this direction, east-west direction, to allegedly to watch for rafters, I don't know for what purpose, he went straight towards Havana.
At 2:57, one of the pilots from the group Brothers to the Rescue tells the control tower in Havana of their intention to fly into airspace south of the 24th parallel. The pilot is warned of possible danger.
They threaten us like they always did.
You are in Cuban airspace, that's a forbidden zone.
We kept on going.
At 3:09, 2 Cuban military jets are airborne.
Well, all hell broke loose very quickly. I saw a MiG zoom in front of us from left to right. I was in conversation with the other two planes, and I lost contact with one of them, and I could see in the distance smoke. I said, oh shit. I was calling the other one.
Mike, are you with us? Yes, sir. Do you see that smoke to my left? I don't see anything now. I did see smoke. To your Mike.
The other one also lost contact with them. Again, saw smoke.
Cuban fighter jets shot 2 of Basulto's planes out of the sky, killing 4 people. Flying a third plane, Basulto barely escaped.
This has been assassination in the high seas.
The problem with the shoot-down is not so much that the shoot-down occurred. I mean, on a human level, of course it is. It's where it occurred.
The U.S. authorities said that Basulto had violated Cuban airspace, but the other 2 planes, according to the U.S., were shot down very close to Cuban waters, but inside international waters, which would be a crime.
The plane, the incident occurred over Cuban territory.
One plane was definitely in Cuban airspace, and I think that the Cuban government and their pilots believed these aircraft were in Cuban airspace.
Saturday's attack was an appalling reminder of the nature of the Cuban regime.
The planes that were shot down were U.S. flagged planes, civilian planes. The people inside were Americans.
Personally, I don't think it's ever justified shooting down a civilian aircraft unless that aircraft is posing like an imminent danger. After so many air incursions and after so many incidents, the Cuban government just felt that they had to enforce their border, and they did this.
It's a duty. It's the most fundamental obligation for any government on earth to protect their population.
Who's to fault here? I say it has to be, a combination of the U.S. government for not stopping these flights and Basulto for undertaking these reckless acts where people got killed.
I think the president has an excellent opportunity to exercise leadership here with Castro and perhaps bring this to an end once and for all.
Basulto hoped that the U.S. would take action, military action against Cuba.
I am not ruling out any further steps in the future, should they be required.
One of the options that the U.S. administration considered was a military option, to retaliate. And if that was a possibility, maybe in Key West Station, the forces there will multiply. An invasion might be coming.
If you see movement that is not the normal movement, so you report that.
Just to say, no, today the United States is not invading Cuba. It's important for Cuba.
Our top story, that confrontation with Cuba over the downing of those 2 light planes this weekend. Planes carrying members of the Cuban exile group called Brothers to the Rescue.
In Miami today, a moment of silence for the 4 missing pilots from Brothers to the Rescue. They are the newest heroes in the exile community.
When the shoot down occurred, that's really when FBI walks into our office, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami, and says there is a potential criminal case of the most serious magnitude. We stepped in and said, hey, we've got to stop this.
They needed to have a scapegoat. Somebody had to answer for this.
Creating an atmosphere in Miami, I needed to be on alert to see what the reaction would be by the U.S. government and the groups. I know that the reaction in Miami was going to be hate.
Good evening. President Clinton late today announced a series of moves against Cuba for the shooting down of 2 light planes, but he stopped well short of ordering any military action against Fidel Castro.
What did we do? We passed some silly laws.
I will move promptly to reach agreement with the Congress on the pending Helms-Burton Cuba legislation so that it will enhance the effectiveness of the embargo in a way that advances the cause of democracy in Cuba.
The Helms-Burton Act tightened the noose against the Cuban government, plunging the country into an even deeper economic crisis. the Cuban government turned to tourism for their economic salvation.
The tourist industry will be a very important way to bring some money, to buy oil in different countries, food, building new hotel. That was to bring more tourists to Cuba.
Series of bombings in Havana.
Havana's luxury hotels, a vital source of foreign currency, have been hit by a spate of bombings, the latest one claiming the life of an Italian tourist.
They were able to tie that explosive device to the exile community in Miami.
There were bombs that were placed in different areas throughout the whole island.
There were people that were killed, maimed, and injured in these explosions.
We were immediately tasked with finding out about the bombs, where the money was coming from.
35-year-old Jesus Hoyas is military commander of Alpha 66. He's led 3 raids on Cuba's beach resorts, targeting the $1.5 billion a year tourism industry that is now Cuba's economic lifeline.
What are you trying to do? Trying to get tourism to stop going in Cuba, trying to spend money, going there economy-wise, trying to stop that so we can liberate Cuba.
This is aimed at the tourist business. Do you think that's important? That's good? That's a good target?
When a country like Cuba has been suffering so much for many years, I don't think the tourists should go there to cooperate to the Castro government.
People will say, no, I don't go to Cuba because it's not safe,
Use all your ability to stop any kind of plot to set up a bomb. I'm talking about terrorists for real. It's not a game. They can kill your people. They can kill your wife to protect you. That's our main mission.
Groups were coming in and setting off bombs in hotels and restaurants. You can be damn sure that our country is going to be, sending spies to figure out who's doing this, who's funding it, who's behind this stuff.
Every single day of my life, I was reaffirmed in the need that Cuba had to have individuals doing what we were doing.
Everything these agents were doing, the FBI knew about. There was a lot of the reports which were being transmitted back to Cuba, which were all being intercepted.
The investigation had been going on for years.
There was a lot of surveillance.
There were some signs. Somebody who saw something here, somebody who believed that his apartment was broke into there, spaced in time, maybe, so much as to not raising an alarm.
I was suspicious of the apartment in front of mine because there was a person that used to live there and suddenly he moved and the apartment continued to be empty, which is weird in that part of Miami Beach where I used to live. And something told me there might be surveillance there.
Breaker, breaker, all units subject is back in view at the bus stop, standing at it.
I was supposed to wait for my contact, and I was supposed to stay in this bus stop. But when I watch inside, I see the one window move like this, I say, well, somebody's watching me from that place.
You detect some signs, but you couldn't tell for sure, and you couldn't abort a mission just for some minor signs.
I moved out of that position, so I moved to another position.
59 is solo, passing the CP, getting ready to enter the Wendy's location.
Okay, all units, subject is moving towards the Wendy's.
I went inside the bathroom of that place. We exchanged the materials, we exchanged the suitcases, we fled.
There was information sent back to Cuba by the Cuban spies regarding the activities of the anti-Castro organizations based in Florida.
Technically speaking, it was a mission that should have been performed by the U.S. authorities. The U.S. law enforcement agencies were the ones that were supposed to disarm violent people, not to permit terrorist plots in that territory, but they didn't.
It's not something that our government should have ever, turned a blind eye to.
Cuba had this information about bombs, wanted to be placed even in U.S. planes. They decided to call for a secret meeting with the FBI. In July 1998, some FBI officers were secretly sent to Havana and had a meeting with the Cuba Security of State. And Cuba presented a lot of information to the FBI about those terrorist organizations, who they are, hoping that they finally would act against those people.
They did nothing. That was in the summer of 1998.
I was traveling, I was tired, and I rented this hotel. It was very cheap. I went to my room, I put the computer in one place. I came back to my car, and when I came back, I didn't see my computer. Somebody stole my computer. I was afraid, it was the FBI. So I sent that information to Cuba, and Cuba sent me back the instruction to go to Miami, close down all my apartment, and go to Cuba. I came back to Miami. On September 11, I was in the process of closing down my apartment. The following day, I was leaving the United States.
It was all full of happiness.
Y René sobre todo dijo, bueno, de esta sí no me voy a perder nada, porque Dimita se había perdido buena parte de su infancia.
Olguita was working. She finished at 11 o'clock. I used to give milk with Yvette on my thighs. That night, when I finished up giving her the milk, she fell asleep. I thought it was beautiful to have her sleep over me, so I put it on top of me.
Cuando yo llego, que lo veo, digo, ay, nene, qué linda está así toda arriba de ti. Voy a tirar una foto. Nosotros tenemos una camarita.
And she took the picture.
Dejo la camarita arriba de la cómoda y bueno, nos acostamos a dormir, acostamos la niña y nos acostamos.
The time now 6:04.
Reporting live from downtown Miami. I got a beautiful sunrise just around the corner here.
One of those days you just want to curl up with a good book.
Echo team to command. Echo team at location. We have eyes on target.
Siento mucha bulla, va, gente dando gritos.
They threw me on the floor.
Ya le tenían puestas las esposas y lo estaban ayudando a incorporar.
It was really brutal.
Cuando me ven a mí, me agarran por una mano y me lanzan contra la pared. No dieron tiempo a más nada, se lo llevaron. Nos dijimos adiós así, con la mano, y se lo llevaron.
There was a series of raids the United States government conducted against the Cuban agents.
Suddenly it was a boom.
They busted the door.
They say, hey, freeze, FBI.
And they were already on top of me.
And a lot of guns, pointing on me.
They arrested me, they put me in the handcuff.
Guerrero lived here in this quiet neighborhood on Big Pine Key. It was here where the FBI took him down.
They took me to the FBI office.
In the FBI headquarters, I saw Gerardo, I saw René.
And they started to interrogate me.
They played good cop, bad cop strategy. Some people come and say, you just cooperate with us. Your best chance now is to switch sides.
Basically, they wanted me to accept that I was a Cuban agent, that I was infiltrating the U.S.
And then the other cop comes and said, you're gonna rot it in the U.S. prison.
They opened up my wallet, they took my driver's license, said, are you Ruben Gamba? Yes, I am.
And I told her, well, my name is Luis Medina. I was born in Houston, Texas. I was raised in Puerto Rico.
He said, too many dead ends. That story is not true. I said, well, that's a story.
We cannot even arrange for you to go free now. You can have another identity.
We putting you in a big house, we bringing your son.
I believe that if you start thinking of that, maybe you can fall. I don't know. I didn't try.
I just giving you the opportunity to tell me the truth to see if you really want to collaborate with us. And I said, well, okay, I'm gonna give you the truth. So, well, my name is Luis Medina. I was born in Houston, Texas, and grew up in Puerto Rico. And then man started to feel like.
And they got very upset when we didn't do it.
Then the interview ended right there.
So he put me in a car and took me to the Federal Detention Center. When we're getting into the Federal Detention Center, there is a sliding door. They know that's a very vulnerable moment for an individual because, I mean, you know when you're going in there, but you don't know when you're going out. So when the door is open, he tells me, you know you're Cuban, and Fidel Castro is not gonna move a finger for you. So you're losing the opportunity to live in the land of the free. And I told him, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm sorry about the language, but that's what I said. I don't know what you're talking about. So that was it.
We have invited you here today to announce the arrest of 10 individuals in the South Florida area. These charges against these individuals allege actions for the Republic of Cuba against the government of the United States.
It was the front page, the lead story. Castro is infiltrating the United States. He's sending spies to Miami.
You know, my initial reaction upon reading it was, oh God, these guys are screwed.
These charges include conspiracy, espionage, operating illegally in the United States as a foreign agent.
It's a disturbing case to know that we and our institutions are being spied upon, are being reported upon, and the information being transmitted back to the Director of Intelligence over in Cuba.
You say you're guilty, that's it. You collaborate with the government and that's it. It's different. You get less time or you can go free or whatever. You say no guilty because you're going to trial.
Since we refused to cooperate, we were placed in what prisoners call the hole, or SHUs, special housing units.
Oh, it's very difficult. If you don't have a strong mind, you get lost.
The trial took place in Miami against the objections of the defense lawyers who wanted to move the trial outside of the Miami area.
This was the wrong place to try the case.
We had a virulent exile community who wanted to just put all of these guys away for the rest of their life. Forget the allegations, forget the fact that they're presumed innocent.
We always suppose that Castro will have agents in the groups here trying to neutralize our activities.
Luis, how are you, sir? Good. I can't, I'm no comment. I can't comment on the case. Thank you.
Cuban spies connotes you're spying. They were never charged with spying. There's no such crime as being a spy. It doesn't exist. Failure to register as a foreign agent. In other words, this country requires all foreign agents, be they spies or friendly, to register. That's not being a spy.
There was no question they were unregistered foreign agents. We didn't really care too much about that because that only carried a maximum of 5 years.
Conspiracy to commit espionage. It is a rare charge. They were charged with not stealing military secrets. Not actually doing so, but agreeing to do so. That's not being a spy. Conspiracy to commit murder has nothing to do with spying. They were never charged with being spies. It's no such crime.
The main count, which was the essence of this case, was conspiracy to commit murder because of the shootdown.
The shootdown, February 1996. Clear and compelling evidence that a foreign government had conspired to murder one or more of our own.
The only one that was ever charged with anything to do with the shootdown was Gerardo.
There was not a plan to shoot down the place.
Government's evidence was Gerardo's reports, and they used these reports to show that Gerardo had ordered Rene not to fly with the brothers to the rescue.
The government argued that that had to make Gerardo 100% aware that they were going to shoot the planes down. My argument to that was, where does it say that?
Conspiracy is basically just an agreement to commit an illegal act.
Nobody knew what exactly they were going to do. There was nothing written that they were going to shoot these planes down. There was no, smoking gun against my client.
It was an extremely circumstantial case.
This happened because people were reckless and people did things that were illegal, and the U.S. government turned a blind eye to it.
The trial really took a change when they started to call some of the brothers to the rescue members.
Lawyer McKenna detailed Basulto's exploits as a CIA operative. The jury and defense listened as the defense labeled Basulto as a CIA-trained saboteur.
I needed to show the jury who this guy really was and what he had been up to.
Today in federal court, things got very heated between Jose Basulto and defense attorney Paul McKenna.
They grilled me as if I was the spy, as if I was the one provoking that whole thing.
After 2 hours of questioning, he said to me,
"Sir, are you doing the work of the intelligence service of Cuba?"
"Stop the trial, take the jury out."
Defense lawyers stunned, the judge reprimanding Basulto.
They were serving the enemy.
Another defense attorney accused Basulto of red baiting, saying if the jury found the accused not guilty, they'd be accused of being communist.
That's good enough to declare a mistrial, but the judge just didn't do it.
The circus without the elephants. That's exactly what it was.
There it was, that was part of the trial. We just kept going. The rest of them were just agents of a government.
We had put forward a defense of necessity.
You gather intelligence so that there won't be a 9/11, so there won't be a terrorist attack. That's what the Cubans were doing.
When do we try foreign spies? We send them back.
Do you know how many agents we have all over the world gathering information for us? Like Castro once said, in industrial quantities.
We wanted to say and to leave there for everybody to see the history of terrorism against Cuba.
Under normal circumstances, reasonable doubt protects Americans and non-Americans alike in a U.S. courtroom from a conviction.
We thought that some of the jury members would understand some of what we were presenting.
That jury sat through months and months of evidence.
We had won the trial overwhelmingly.
Lawyers thought that we have won the trial. Attorneys, translators thought that we have won the trial. Even the marshals thought that we have won the trial.
This afternoon, the jury returned guilty verdicts as to all counts, as to all defendants.
The jury found them guilty of all 26 counts, including conspiracy to commit espionage, conspiracy to commit murder.
I think the jury got it wrong.
This shut down an entire cell that had tentacles throughout South Florida. And so it was, without doubt in my mind, a successful prosecution.
We knew that to be acquitted in a courtroom in Miami would be almost impossible.
I hope sincerely that today's verdict provides some sense of justice.
It's probably the only case in the U.S. history where somebody is found guilty of conspiracy to commit espionage without one single piece of secret information anywhere.
I'm shaking my head, And Rene Gonzalez looks at me and says, Paul, what did you expect? This is Miami. And I was like, yeah, he's right. This is Miami.
We were found guilty of every single count, and we were given the maximum sentence.
Fernando and Rene Gonzalez have got 19 and 15 years.
Y yo no estaba triste, que más allá de la tristeza yo lo que estaba era muy indignada.
To tell you the truth, I didn't care about the sentence. I knew what it was going to be.
I didn't do anything to harm anybody. I just was defending human beings.
Antonio Guerrero and Ramon Labañino got life in prison.
I never had in my heart that somebody can picture what I'm doing as bad thing.
In Miami, we knew from the very beginning we were going to lose the trial.
Gerardo Hernandez received 2 life sentences to be served consecutively.
2 life sentences plus 15 years. So I have to die twice and still have 50 more years to go.
I mean, it was effectively a death sentence. And I thought that was appropriate.
Y que Gerardo regresara a Cuba horizontal, como decimos, en un féretro si devolvían un día su cadáver.
2002, they were finally moved to various federal prisons, and they were separated by hundreds and thousands of miles.
To die in prison is relatively easy. With so many people getting killed.
The life in prison is very tough, very, very tough.
So the first resolution I made, it was, if I had to die here, I would die happy. That's it.
From the very beginning, we knew that the government of Cuba would never abandon us, never.
Solo les digo una cosa, volverán.
Cuba would do as much as possible to take us back to Cuba.
He never seemed to lose his belief that everything would be okay. It's, I can't wait to see my wife again. And when I saw his wife, the same thing.
Lo sabíamos. Nos los dijo el comandante cuando lo hizo público, que dijo, no será una batalla de un día, será una batalla de años.
And I used to go away thinking, don't these people realize he's never going to get out? He's going to serve the rest of his life in a U.S. penitentiary.
As soon as the trial finished, we started already receiving mail from different parts of the world.
The plight of the Cuban Five was becoming more and more known internationally through the efforts of international Cuban solidarity groups, the efforts of the Cuban government. There was pressure put on the American government to either retry the five or release them outright.
How could we convince the Court of Appeals to undo this thing? And then, a miracle of miracles, we did.
The case was argued for the U.S. Court of Appeals in 2004. In 2005, they issued a 90-plus page opinion agreeing with the defense position, saying that the venue was improper, that the five could not have gotten a fair trial in Miami, and the events surrounding the trial formed a perfect storm.
And they overturned the convictions.
And everybody was very happy at that time.
I got to tell you, though, that when that Court of Appeals reversed the verdict, I had kind of a renewed faith in the entire federal system of laws. I was like, what an amazing country.
Y Gerardo me dice, bueno, mi reina, ¿estás contenta? ¿Estás feliz? Y le dije, sí, Gera, ahora sí ya ganamos, ahora sí es lo que queríamos. Me dice con mucha serenidad y me dice, ten cuidado. Dice, ¿ya ves la luz al final del túnel? Digo, sí, ahora sí se ve la luz al final del túnel. Dice, bueno, mi reina, ten mucho cuidado, no sea la luz del tren que está virando.
We were really excited, waiting for the new trial, and things started to get cold, you know, like nothing was happening.
When the en banc court reversed it, I kind of like all washed out of me. And I was back to, well, I guess, you know, it's not the way I thought it was.
Nosotros, eso fue el momento que para mí cerró todas las puertas legales.
Renee was released in October of 2011.
My sister ran and I ran after her and we just hugged him really, really, really hard.
One of the five is finally back in Cuba after 13 years in jail. His name is Rene Gonzalez, and he is embraced by the Cuban people as a national hero.
And a second member of the Cuban Five spy ring was released today from a U.S. prison. 50-year-old Fernando Gonzalez.
I saw my family, my wife, my mother, my sisters, and the families of my four brothers. They were all there. They were also there.
It was a day of joy also for me to go there to the airport and receive him and give him a hug. And at the same time, both Fernando and myself, we had the same feeling of still being a little bit in prison.
Cuando regresó Fernando, faltaban los tres que tenían cadena perpetua.
I always hoped that the five of us would come together.
He never felt quite free.
On one side, you have to keep your hope one day I'm gonna be in Cuba with my family, because that's the only way to keep your spirits up. But on the other side, you have to be realistic too. You might spend here the rest of your life, but then you said, I'm not here for stealing or killing anybody or for selling drugs. I'm here for a cause, for defending my people. So if I have to die here, that's the way it is.
Today, the United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba.
Earlier today, a prisoner swap between the United States and Cuba set off the most significant warming in relations between our two countries in over half a century.
Completely shocked. I couldn't believe it.
President Obama made his decision to release 3 Cuban spies convicted of espionage on American soil.
We were given the news that we were getting back to Cuba. Got into a plane and back to Cuba. The first one getting down was Antonio, and then Ramon, and I was the last one. It was a very emotional moment.
We felt that we are the happiest men on the world, at that time.
The three together, it's no word for that.
Hasta que no nos abrazamos, hasta que no nos vimos, y sentí la felicidad más grande que había sentido en toda mi vida.
It was amazing.
Gerardo, who was in jail for 2 life sentences, came back to the announcement that his wife was giving birth to his first child.
Most of the people in Cuba didn't know, even most of her family. Watching her on TV with big belly, everybody was, what? What is going on here?
Sí, ya ese fue el cierre.
We came back in December 17th, and then the baby was born in January 6th. Being able to father a child, that was probably the happiest moment in my life.
Very emotional moment. It's a moment the people of Cuba are expressing through that medal how they feel about you.
Are they heroes? No, the answer clearly is no from my perspective. I think they should still be in the United States serving their time.
We are not 5 individuals that are exceptional in Cuba. We know that millions of Cubans would have done the same thing that we did. My conscience is clear, it's clean. If I had to do it, I'd do it again.
I would do it again exactly the way I did it, but much, much better.
Any action that they ask me to do, I would do it. I would try to do it the best I can do it.
It takes a toll on you. It's not easy. But on the other side, you know it's your duty to do it.
If my country asked me to do that, I assume it's because it would be needed and I would do it again.
You can take people that are true heroes, that have done something extraordinary to advance humankind. That's not who these 5 individuals were.
That meeting was first a celebration of a big victory, one of the last victories that Fidel claimed against the United States government.
I haven't lost a night of sleep on account of any of the things that I have done throughout my involvement since the beginning to this day with Cuba.